All right, everyone. Thursday morning. We're getting through the international break. This is the morning briefing from the Celtic Way with Hamish. Ryan is here again, and Kevin is on. Hello, Kevin. Long time no speak.
Yeah, a lot's happened. A lot's happened. Not all of it great.
Yeah, very true. What's on your mind, Kevin? What kind of mood are you in regarding Celtic at the moment? Just to get us kicked off.
Well, first of all, you do know that I hate the international break.
You never
it means
mentioned that.
it means next to nothing for me, and I wish we could just go back to how it used to be, where you played the internationals and got them out of the way in the Wednesday, and the league programme goes on. However, that said, that's where we are. I've been talking to lots of people about the Glasgow Derby defeat, and the consensus is that, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, because I was at a family event on Saturday night, and all of us, it wasn't a case of, are we going to beat them? It's like we must take 3 or 4 off them because of what happened at Ibrox. But it was clear within the first 15, 20 minutes that, Rangers are we've got to say this, Rangers are a different beast. And we didn't seem to learn many of the lessons after the 3-0 game at Ibrox, because they played the same way and we just didn't have the answers. Certainly, second half, we showed that we're better than them, and I was thinking at 2-1, if we get a goal with 10 minutes to go at 2-2, we win it. But there was 2, maybe 3 errors in that Rangers winner. And I think, okay, it's a defeat to Rangers at home after 5 years. And that's another thing, in the history of this fixture, neither team, no matter how far ahead they may be of their rivals, of the others, you just can't expect to go year after year after year after year winning. So it was going to happen at some point. And if it's going to happen, it's best that it happens when you're 16 points ahead in the title with only, 8, 9, 10 games to go. However, we're just not as good as we think we are. It's as simple as that. And, we've got a decision to make. Loads of clubs would love to be in our position with the bank balance that we have. But how are we going to use it? Time will tell if this purported takeover of Rangers is going to happen, and even then, if it's going to mean a lot of money suddenly being released to them. But there's a potential that we're going to have a major challenge from our closest rivals that we haven't really had for a few years. And if we're discussing this, I'm hoping that similar discussions are taking place at the Celtic boardroom with Brendan Rodgers, because there was large parts of that game, like at Ibrox, like at Hampden, where we just weren't good enough, and I think it was a mentality issue. The other thing is Callum McGregor. Whatever anybody says, we still need him.
100%.
Yeah. And then, of course, you could do a whole program, you could do a whole podcast about the makeup of the defence, and who should be brought in, given the performances on Sunday. That's an entirely different debate, which we've had in this podcast several times.
Yeah. Hopefully, for me, I'm hoping that Sunday's derby is just a bit of a wake-up call for the team, and they can fire forward for the rest of the season and really make this a season we look back on for years to come. I think that's still possible. We've said what needs to happen. We need to win the treble. Obviously, you need to win the league in style and ideally win at Ibrox in the final derby. And I think we'll all be feeling really good going into the summer. So things can change pretty quickly. Just before we get started, by the way, a quick word from our sponsor. This Celtic Way video is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. Ryan, good morning. What's on your mind?
I've been enjoying the sort of detox from everything focused on the Glasgow derby after with this international break. There was such a disappointment on Sunday, and I think we're reopening closed wounds or wounds that were closing when it comes to that game. But it is worth talking about. Just on the takeover comments that Kevin was saying, the way that Celtic operate, I actually think it's a good thing for them that they'll have a challenge, if that is to be the case, because this is I would say that the board are quite reactive in everything that they do. And if they see that money is getting put into their rivals, then it'll force, the likes of Dermot Desmond, the money men at the club to pump more money into the football club. So I know how this club works, through watching them over the years, how they react to certain things. You think about that semi-final defeat at Hampden to Mark Warburton's Rangers when Ronnie Dyler was in charge. The reaction to that was bringing in Brendan Rodgers. Likewise, if things were to move positively for Rangers on the financial front, then I would say that Celtic would then move and try and challenge that as well, because that's just the way that this board works. They've got previous for it. They've done this in the past. So if that's the way that they're going to work, then I see any takeovers as being a positive. But at the same time, I've hardly really heard anything about the takeovers in the past few weeks, similarly to how Rangers seem to be doing well on the pitch. So the takeover talk seems to not be happening as much off the pitch. But yeah, it was disappointing on Sunday. Looking forward to getting back to it next Saturday against Hearts. Not a chance for revenge as such, but a chance to get one step closer to that title.
And does Nawrocki play for you, Ryan?
If Trusty is fit, then for me, Trusty plays alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers.
Yeah.
I
don't think we'll see
Nawrocki
again this season, personally.
I think he was there due to emergency, to be honest with you. I think Scales would have been playing there if he was fit.
See, the fact that Brendan Rodgers didn't go for Dane Murray, was that interesting at all? Because Dane Murray was the one who came on at Villa Park, and it was kind of assumed Dane Murray was their fourth choice. Was it just too big a game maybe for
That's what I feel.
Dane Murray? I mean, Nawrocki played very well, I thought.
He did, and it was a weird one because he played well, and he played actually all right against Rangers in the 2-1 win at Christmas time last year, or the festive period. So he came into that game, but it's a strange one. I think the recruitment that summer was certainly strange from Celtic. You look at the players that they brought in, how many of those players are still at the club, and even in the players that are at the club, how much game time are they actually getting? You look at Lagerbielke, who's clearly a good player. He's doing well for 20 this season in the Eredivisie, but horribly scouted because he doesn't fit Celtic's style of play whatsoever. He's a very slow defender. You need a wee bit of pace about, Trusty, even Nawrocki to an extent, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Scales. They've all got that turn of pace that's needed. They're not really slow. Whereas whenever Lagerbielke played, and I know he played few and far between for Celtic, he always looked as if he could be turned quite easily. So that was bad scouting on Celtic's part. Nawrocki's just a strange one because he was highly rated coming from Legia Warsaw. People forget how young he is. He's only, 22, 23 years old. Played against Brendan Rodgers' Leicester side in the Europa Conference League for Legia Warsaw. By all accounts, he was man of the match that night and a back three for Legia Warsaw. Had those games, had those injuries, and then for whatever reason, like with Lagerbielke, he wasn't fancied, partly due to Scales' form in the second half of last season, but also not getting game time whatsoever, which was quite puzzling considering Celtic paid 3.54 million for his services. He was one of the big signings last summer. I don't think we'll see him again unless required. I think Brendan Rodgers has made his mind up, and that's unfortunate because I do want to see more of him. Want to see if he does have a future, much like Yang. But if Brendan Rodgers has made his mind up, he's one of these guys that kind of sticks to his guns when he makes judgments on players.
I think he actually does lack pace a little bit, Naropski, and I think that might be why we've not seen him more. I just don't think Brendan Rodgers fancies him as a fit. Every time I've seen him, well, not every time, that's a bit of a stretch, but I think certainly a lot of the times I've seen him in big games, he's been pretty good. He's clearly a good defender, but I just think Brendan Rodgers wants pace and power in the team, and I think he lacks that pace. Just briefly, because we're talking about injuries, there's a few reports last night. So Callum McGregor, Kevin, is set to be back for the weekend. There was a report last night saying, not much information there, but saying that McGregor would be back in. And Daiza Maida's back training with Japan. They're playing in 20 minutes. They kick off home to Bahrain. If they win that, they qualify for their 8th World Cup in a row. Maida and Hatate are both on the bench. So Maida fit to be on the bench, Kevin, and it seems like McGregor will be back as well for Hearts, which is good news Maida hasn't missed any time for us, but it's good to have them both available.
Yeah. I just wonder, at this point, at this part of the season, when you see players going away in international duty, you're hoping, obviously, none of them get injured. Yeah. But see, with Maida and Hatate, you've just mentioned, first of all, it's the Celtic way to bring you the first and the breaking news on the Japanese international front. Very impressed with that, Hamish. Japan 8 times they'll have qualified 8 times in a row. It's good, when you say they were on the bench, I'm thinking, right, okay, good. I hope they don't, there's less scope for them getting injured. But on the other hand, I'm chuffed that we've got 2 players who are in and about that squad, because Japan are clearly a very good, very seasoned World Cup team, and the higher the level that our players can play at, the better. So it does my heart good to hear that they're in. Is Kyogo in?
He's not here at all. Actually, I was just looking for him there, and he's don't know what's going on with Kyogo. It's an interesting.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I saw a report on social media last night that they're looking to sell him, but I don't know if that's entirely true. But anyway, it's not the first time that's happened when somebody leaves Celtic.
Yeah, just a few other players as well, Ryan. Liam Scales, I believe there was a bit of chat about him potentially having surgery. So I think he's going to undergo surgery, possibly already has, for a broken jaw that he sustained against St Mirren. So he's going to miss. He's not going to be back for Hearts, quite honestly. Paulo Bernardo, James Forrest could potentially be back. Austin Trusty, the other one, I think Pochettino, was the USA boss, was speaking about him yesterday and shed absolutely no light on things at all. He basically said, I'm not a doctor, I can't say anything else, but it's a calf issue with Trusty. I don't think he was too far away from being able to play in the derby, so he's another one you would hope he would be back. So you would hope that our potentially strongest team could line up against Hearts in 9 days' time.
Absolutely, and I would say that Austin Trusty is part of that strongest 11.
Yeah.
I think in the last couple of Glasgow derbies as well, despite Mike Nawrowski coming into the team and doing well, Celtic have still conceded 6 goals to Rangers in the past 2. 9 in the last 3, which is a dreadful record to have. But 6 of those goals were without Austin Trusty on the bench, and he came off after half-time in the League Cup final as well. I think there's games, and there's some games in which I think he struggles in against physical opponents. And Cyril Dessers is a physical player, but I feel like Austin Trusty would be able to get the better of a player like him, especially at home. So I think he was missed on Sunday, despite Mike Nawrocki stepping into that role, because of that partnership between Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty. I think that, yes, they've had a couple of adverse games. I think the Dundee game in particular, Hibs away as well. But for the most part, Austin Trusty's had a good first season for Celtic, particularly in the big games against Champions League opponents. I look at Aston Villa, I look at Bayern Munich, Atalanta, RB Leipzig. It seems like the bigger the occasion, the better. A wee bit of the Chris Julian about him in that way, I would say, even in the physicality too. The bigger the game, the more that he seems to be not up for it, but focused and ready at what opponent he's playing against. So I think he was missed on Sunday. You know, if you take a £6 million defender out of the team, it's going to hamper the team. Even though Celtic paid a good amount of money for Nawrocki, he's hardly played any football, and that must have an effect on a player like Carter-Vickers as well, who was, you know, uncharacteristically shaky on Sunday. I've only seen him like that in a couple of games in his whole Celtic career, and he's played over 100 games for Celtic. The sooner Trusty's back, the better, and I hope that his calf injury isn't too serious. Just a side note, it's incredible the managers that the likes of Canada and USA are suddenly managing to attract. You've got Canada, who've got Jesse Marsh, you've got Maurizio Pochettino, who was Chelsea manager last season, now the USA manager. There must be quite a bit of money going around in those associations for those players, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Trusty, Kevin, I guess there is similarities there with Julian, and I've never really thought of that before, but he's, Munich, for example, he was great that night, and I guess when the issue maybe with Trusty so far, and I think generally he's been pretty good so far, but if someone really gets tight and ruffles him up, he certainly needs to deal with that a bit better. But I think he's been decent enough so far.
My main issue, though, is, and I hear what you're saying about Brendan Rodgers favouring pace at the back, but it's quite clear the last 3 times we've played Rangers that a bigger issue for us is coolness under pressure when they have a high press, being able to find our midfielders, who can spring defence into attack, and that hasn't. I mean, it began to function. It began to function on Sunday, but only after we were two goals down. It began to function, but only after we went a goal down against Rangers in the League Cup final. And that concerns me. It's funny when we played Bayern Munich, both at home and away. I didn't think actually Bayern were cared too much about pressing us a great deal, probably because they thought, well, at some point we're going to get the ball. You know, what's the point in kind of busting a gut? This isn't Real Madrid we're playing. And I just wondered if, it kind of lulled us into a kind of false sense of security that, we can handle playing out from the back against the likes of Bayern Munich, then we don't need to, fear anybody. But I don't really think that was a true reflection. And that's the one big area for me when we go to Ibrox before the end of the season. And by the way, even if we've got the league title sewn up by then, that's a must win for us, because it's been a long time since, over the course of 4 or 5 games against Rangers in a season where they have got the better of that series. I mean, I think you have to go back to the 15, 16 years ago. And that's, these things are important. And that's a must-win game. And I don't care how many points we're ahead of them and whether we're on course for a treble or not. That game has to be won.
Yeah, I agree. It feels big. And yeah, regardless of us being champions, I think even if we're champions, the fans will really want a performance and a result that day. It's not just the team aren't going to be allowed just to fall to a defeat like we did a couple of years ago after we won the league, and it was forgotten about very quickly because we clearly had the upper hand on the pitch on Rangers, but at the moment there's some doubt about that during matches. So that's going to be a big one. You're probably looking second or third fixture of the split. So potentially the way it's going, we might win the league first game after the split. I noticed Sky had moved our game before the split yesterday for TV coverage. They're obviously covering all bases on the potential that we, or the possibility, sorry, that we win the league at home to Kilmarnock. But that's a big one. The pressure stuff's interesting because we do look really flustered at times. But then there's other times, like, I don't know if you guys remember the first derby of the season, but the first few minutes of that first derby, Rangers very similarly were pressing us and we looked disjointed and we were giving the ball away. And then we had that counter-attack for the goal that was ruled out for the offside. And
Callum McGregor was instrumental in.
McGregor and Hatate, I think it was. And that just completely, it was almost as if that just gave us all the belief and like put doubt into their minds. And the game from that point was a complete breeze for us. It was a total domination. So, but when we don't get that kind of thing, it just seems as if the team are flustered and they're unable to get through it. It's a bizarre thing because we know they can play. I mean,
I watched
RB Leipzig.
I watched the second half again. I forced myself to watch the second half on Sunday again. And Celtic played really well in the second half. There was only one team that was going to win that game after we equalised. And Rangers didn't have an answer. I'm not saying we were on fire because I think our defence was very fragile. And I don't want to have a chat about Alistair Johnson because he's done so well for us. And I'm just hopeful that was a one-off. But we played well in the second half. I mean, a wee bit of history here. In 2001, we went to Ibrox and the league was well won. Henrik Larsson was on course for his 50 goals. It was Brendan Rodgers, it was Martin O'Neill's first season, 6-2 and all that. But we hadn't beaten Rangers at Ibrox for years. And I remember going to that game and we're absolutely delighted that we're on course for a treble that year against all the odds. But see the tension in the Broomloan Road stand. It was bizarre, that level of tension, knowing that you're about to win the treble, knowing that you've already beaten Rangers 6-2, and it was only because we hadn't beaten Rangers at Ibrox for several years, and look, we had to win almost to sort of underscore our right to be champions, or they would have that against us. You still couldn't beat us at Ibrox. Now I know that we've got a good record at Ibrox over the last. Basically since 2016, we've won as many as we've lost at Ibrox in the league. But it's the same. I'm getting the same kind of feeling, and it's just because, as you had said, we've lost 9 goals in the last 3 games, and that's at all 3 grounds: Hampden, Ibrox, Parkhead. And Celtic need the statement win, and they do need to look at that area of playing out from the back. We need to find a device by which we can attract them in, because we know the way they'll play, and then spring them, as you said, with that crucial McGregor Hatate one-touch sweeping move in the 3-0 game.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a big game, and things can change so quickly, Ryan. That's the thing. Like, Celtic could go there and win, and we're probably all going to be backing Celtic to do that, let's be honest, because I still think this is a good Celtic team. And if you do that again, everything flips. So things can change so quickly in this fixture and in Glasgow.
Yeah, it's the goldfish bowl that you swim about in and it's never changed, even despite the different levels of teams. And I know it's been up and down through history, but it's been mostly Celtic since the turn of the millennium. But it's always the same. These are the big games, despite not the treble, but the league essentially being over. Maybe that was one of the reasons that Sunday happened, was because Celtic are so far in front that they maybe subconsciously took their eye off the ball a little bit, which wasn't the message from Brendan Rodgers on Friday, a couple of days before the game, which was probably all the more annoying that what he believed was going to come didn't transpire on the day. But I agree. I think you go to that game whenever it is after the split. It will be at Ibrox. I think it is a must-win for Celtic, just to not to save face, but to really underline and just maintain that dominance in the city and in the fixture between Celtic and Rangers. They won last season in worse circumstances. Remember when Liam Scales got drafted in alongside Lagerbielke and Hugo scored that goal? It was a weird goal because he scored and there was no sound whatsoever because there was no away fans, obviously. Just silence and a little bit of shouting from the home support. This time around, there will be fans at the game, and Celtic will be in a buoyant mood knowing that probably by that point they've already won the league. So I would be hoping that they're listening to all of the stuff that's been said. They're seeing all these Instagram posts and social media posts from the Rangers players. They were up for it on Sunday and Celtic weren't. It's time for it to switch and Celtic to be up for what they can bring to Ibrox in April or May, depending on when it'll be.
Who else is in international action today? I'm just looking because South Korea are playing in half an hour. I've got their team here. Mm-hmm. And there is no Yang certainly in the starting lineup. O's there on the bench. Remember him? And we've got Yang's on the bench as well. So how's O getting on? He's scoring a few goals.
Yes, he's been really good for Genk. He's scoring quite a few goals. I can see an improvement in the player as well with some of the goals that he's scoring. I always thought he looked okay for Celtic, but a young player trying to make it. If there's one place for a player to develop, particularly maybe away from the spotlight, away from the expectancy at Celtic, it's probably in Belgium. I think Belgium's a really good league for a player to go and really hone their craft and hone their skills. And by all accounts, I know he's not started every game, but he's made an impact and he's scoring late goals and really endearing himself to the support. So delighted to see him do well. I always quite liked him whenever he stepped foot onto the pitch. I wasn't 100% confident that he would score the goals required to make it at Celtic, but he's still a young player, and by all accounts, he's doing well for Genk. So hopefully he can keep that going for himself, both for his own future and then the international future as well with South Korea. Because the more good players in South Korea's team, the better. Because I think that's something that's not getting spoke about. There's a small issue of national service in South Korea. Now, when Celtic signed the two South Korean players in the last summer, Kwon's already done his national service, which is mandatory in South Korea due to the tensions with the North. Yang hasn't. Yang's not taking part, and the way to exempt yourself from that is by winning either like a gold medal in the Olympics or winning the Asia Cup, and you get granted that exemption. Every male in South Korea has to do some form of national service. Even some of the pop stars over there have to do it as well. So you're hoping that South Korea team can grow and win something on the continental stage, because you don't want a player to be going for 18 months, 2 years to go and do mandatory national service if he doesn't need to.
Yeah, you wonder how long he'll stay at Celtic for, either good or bad. He strikes me as someone who's Yang's either going to explode and be our next £20 million player, or he's probably going to fall by the wayside. That's my feeling, and I think it could well be the former. Like I think he looks good when he came on in the derby. I thought he looked really, really kind of direct, and I think he's turned a bit of a corner, Yang. I've said this a few times on the channel. I want to see him starting against Hearts. I want, and nothing major against Nicholas Kuhn, but I want Yang in that team. Start and see what he can do from the start.
I like him a lot. I think you talk about him turning a corner. I think since Christmas, when he's been coming off the bench, he's been making an impact very, very quickly. Chipped in with 2 or 3 goals. And he did, he'd done an immediate impact when he came off the bench on Sunday. His confidence is high. He's got a bit of, our midfield, there's one kind of weakness. When we're on song, there's nobody better. No midfield is better in Scotland. But we kind of need an enforcer. And he's, although he's playing wide, but see when he gets the ball, he's a unit. He's got really good skill, but he's hard to shrug off the ball too. He can put himself about. He's quite powerful, and he goes in where it hurts. And he doesn't shirk a tackle. I like him a lot.
Yeah. But I want to see him from the start and to really see what he can do, because that's the real judge. I think Bernardo coming back is pretty big as well. I just think that midfield at the moment, I just think it could do a wee change, a bit of competition in there. I just think,
competition.
I just think Bernardo coming back in could revitalise things. So I want to see a couple of changes for the Hearts game. I think you need to see that, get some competition going again. Say to guys like Kuhn and potentially Engels, your place isn't guaranteed here. You let yourself down a bit in the derby with your performance. We've got someone else who can come in. James Forrest coming back, I think that'll be quite big as well for us in the closing weeks of the season. So all good. Final comments, Ryan, then we'll head.
Yeah, I completely echo the comments about Yang from both yourself and Kevin. I do enjoy what he brings. I thought he was one of the only positive parts of that game on Sunday when he came onto the park, because he brought that fearlessness that you need to be a Celtic player. You can't be thinking about the derby, because if you're thinking about the derby, then it's already in your head. You've got to go out and play your own game. But Yang did do that, and he has been doing that more often than not. When he's came onto the pitch, he's making an impact. He's running at his man. All of a sudden there isn't that not groan, but doubt in the stands whenever he gets the ball that he's going to beat his man. More often than not, you expect him to just go by him because of his confidence. I think he's really been buoyed by that St Mirren performance in which he scored two headers. That's been massive for him. And also for the manager, persevering with him when there wasn't that many options on the wings. There was a load of games where he was starting, and there was a lot of dissenting voices saying he shouldn't be starting this game, it should be somebody else. Brendan Rodgers continued to persevere with him and give him that opportunity. And I think that's helped him, because he didn't play well in all of those games, but he got that run that would have made him feel like a Celtic player for maybe the first time, having that 5-6 game stretch in which he could play in the majority of games. And I think that's helped him. I mean, coming off the bench, he's a good impact player, but like you, Hamish, I want to see him start against Hearts. I think he's got something to show, and I think the improvements are there for all to see.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on Yang. I was going to say he's kicking off in 20 minutes. He's not, but he's on the bench. He might get some minutes for South Korea. They're playing Oman. Japan have just kicked off against Bahrain. Neither Rio nor Dyson are starting. They're both on the bench. Australia 4-0 up on Indonesia. Apparently there's around 80% of the stadium supporting Indonesia in the matches in Sydney. So it's a bit of a strange one going on here. But
isn't Patrick Kluivert managing Indonesia now?
Couldn't tell you.
Have that. I think they've got quite a famous manager. I'd need to double check that.
But yes,
that's quite incredible.
Well done, you guys.
Yeah.
It's just because his son's doing well for Bournemouth this season.
This has been an education.
Well, it's been something, certainly. It's been a bit of chat in the derby. We've got through it. We're feeling positive about things. We're half an hour further into the international break, Kevin, nearer to finishing. So a week from now, we'll be building ahead to Hearts fully, but we'll keep our powder dry for that for now. Okay, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate your support always, but especially during the international break. Thanks for sticking with us. Those of you watching live, those of you watching after. More on the website, more from me and the squad tomorrow on the YouTube. Speak to you then.